Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here, and a couple days ago Apple released the macOS Sequoia 15.6 update, and in that time I've been testing the new update against OpenCore Legacy Patcher for unsupported Macs using the latest version of 2.4.0. I've been making sure that everything has been running very well on the testing fleet. I do this because I want to find any issues before you install it on your Mac. So let's jump in and get started. Quick edit note here. While I was editing, I wanted to mention that I apologize for the lateness of this video. I always want to try to get it out as quick as possible because I know a few of you reached out to say that they wait until this video comes out before they update their unsupported Mac, and I truly appreciate that. I really do. That means a lot to me, and that's why I want to make sure that these videos are very detailed and they have as much information as possible, and that goes into the length of the video. I know that they're super long, but that's why I put detailed chapter notes. I want to make sure that if you only are interested in certain parts of the video, then go on there, click this button and go into that section. Don't feel the pressure to watch all the way through, but if you do, I truly appreciate it. The 15.6 update is important because it's one of the last big updates for macOS Sequoia. What I mean by that is that once macOS Tahoe comes out in September, macOS Sequoia is going to be the second OS after Tahoe, then Sequoia, and then macOS Sonoma will be that third supported security update OS. So then once it hits 15.7, it's going to go into security update mode. No new features. If there's some security type fixes, that's what it's going to be included as a main point for that, and that's why it's called a security update release. But if there's anything major, they will fix some bugs, right? But it has to be a big deal and affecting a lot of people for them to go back to that code and try to get that fixed again. That's why it's important to know the cycle of releases here. Even though Apple says it does the full support for 3 years, it usually ends like right now. Here we are, July, August, when that final update comes out. So I just wanted to set the table for understanding of the updates. And a lot of the focus is already being put onto Tahoe, and it's a pretty big deal. Let's talk about macOS Tahoe and OpenCore Legacy Patcher. There's a lot of excitement around macOS Tahoe because of the full redesign, and a lot of people want to try it out on their older Macs. But there's also a lot of changes, and there's a lot of hurdles that have to be overcome by the developers before this even happens. So I've shown this article before, and Dina K now is running it since Nicola has now moved on to working from Apple, and there's a detailed list of all the things that are going on. And this is an updated list too. And if there's anything new found, it will be put into this list. And I'll put a link down here so you can see some of the struggles that are currently going on with the developers in trying to get macOS Tahoe to run. When you see other people testing, I want to give another warning, and you've heard me talk about this before. I just want to make sure that you understand, if you haven't heard me talk about this yet, I only recommend trying to install macOS Tahoe on your unsupported Mac if you have a test device that you're willing to have to fully erase and reinstall again. I don't want to say don't do it, because you know what? This is your machine. If you want to test it, right? But if it's your only machine, do not install the beta. And that's important to say because it's not supported, and the developers have fully recommended not installing the OS. And you can see I put this up here on the OpenCore Legacy Patcher subreddit, the reason why. It could result in possible hardware issues, data loss, in a complete reformat of the system, or something might go wrong with EFI. It's unknown because there's 83 different models. So I just wanted to give that a warning to not install. And again, it's still a beta. There's still problems with the supported operating system on M1 through M4 Mac. That's just a level set to understand macOS Tahoe. And then I wanted to talk about the current progress. There's progress going on. This is a list of some of the things that are being worked on and already patched within macOS Tahoe, but it's still a while off. So don't expect it in the release, but we might be surprised, but they've already said later in the year for all the hurdles that they have to take. If you have any questions on macOS Tahoe and OpenCore Legacy Patcher, let me know in the comments below. The next thing I wanted to talk about is an important one. Is this update worth it to install on your older unsupported Macs? Is there any features or fixes that might help you? Well, that's why I put out my 15.6 update. And this includes fixes for all the supported devices, and it trickles down to the unsupported Macs. If you watch my video, you can see that Apple does not have any fixes in here other than a fix for DFU mode for M1 through M4 Apple Silicon devices. But they also say it provides important bug fixes. So what is that? I don't know. And I've always had that big complaint that if Apple's going to fix something, please put it in here so we know whether it's worth it to install. With that said, there's 71 security updates in here. And when we talk about unsupported Macs, one of the big reasons why we install a newer version is to protect ourselves against some of the vulnerabilities in macOS. So if you're running High Sierra, you're running years upon years of non-support by Apple. That means people can develop malware, bugs, and all kinds of 0 days for that OS that you're vulnerable to that Apple is not patching. So that's why when someone says, oh, well, you don't want to put a Windows XP machine on the network, or you want to put a High Sierra device on the network, because it's true, they're not supported. Now, just because you put it on the network, does that mean that you're immediately going to get hacked? No. But once you start to use the operating system to download and install applications, use Safari to surf the web, those browsers don't have that protection that are blocking the latest vulnerabilities and 0 days that are out there right now. macOS Sequoia does. When we're talking about security, that's a reason why we want to install 71 fixes. Each one of those was submitted by a security research to Apple, and Apple paid them because they're an ethical researcher, and they're showing Apple, this is the problem, you got to patch it. And they did. This is an important piece that has to be considered if you want to keep your Mac secure while you're out using the internet and downloading and installing applications and stuff like that. Now, keep in mind, we all know that there is a couple things that the developers of OpenCore Legacy Patcher have to do to bring the security level a little lower to get the operating system running. For example, a non-sealed snapshot. Not all of the parts of system integrity protection have to be disabled to be able to run the operating system. I would say, as a recommendation, that's still more safe than running like High Sierra out there, by far. So now with that known of the security updates, there's some enterprise fixes in here, but a lot of these don't have anything to do with for unsupported Macs, unless you're running unsupported Mac in an enterprise environment, but I don't recommend it. If you want the safest, most secure OS, run a supported system with the latest version of Mac OS that is released by Apple. That's how to stay 100% safe. The next thing we have to talk about is the Kernel Debug Kit and the MetalLibSupport package. These are required pieces of macOS Sequoia to be able to patch your system and have the best compatibility. In the past, Apple is the one who releases the Kernel Debug Kit, and then that is downloaded and installed while you're doing the root patches. And the same with the MetalLibSupport package, right? But this time around, it's different. We've had 4.5 days now, almost 5, and Apple still has not released the 15.6 Kernel Debug Kit. Even more interesting is that they have not released a Kernel Debug Kit for macOS Tahoe since Beta 1 either. I'm not sure how to read this. Are they working on other things and they're not releasing that? I don't know. This is something we're going to have to keep an eye on. And what that means, though, is, use an example of 2015 MacBook Pro with an AMD Radeon graphics chip, and that needs the KDK. And you install 15.6. It's going to install the 15.5 one that's currently out there. The developers have said that newest OS is also sometimes most likely backward compatible with 1 or 2 versions of the KDK with no problems. That's not fully known across all 83 models until some of the reports start coming back in. I haven't seen any issues whatsoever with my fleet yet, but that doesn't mean someone else is going to have it. Now, Apple could still release the 15.6 KDK a week later, but that would be strange. We've seen, I think, up to 6 or 8 days that it's taken them. So we'll have to keep an eye on next week, and I'll update this. And if you've already installed it and you want to get that 15.6 KDK, just go into OpenCore Legacy Patcher and then click on Install Root Patches again, and it'll pull down that 15.6 KDK if it's there. If they don't release it, well, we're going to be rolling with 15.5 KDK for a while, so we'll have to see how that goes. Now, the MetalLibSupport package is created on the server, automated. It goes out there and checks if there's an update. If there is, it pulls the IPSW and builds that and puts it in the MetalLibSupport releases, and we have the 15.6 build for that. If you've noticed that you didn't get the pop-up, that's the reason. It's not there for downloading yet. So that's KDK and MetalLibSupport package. Let's go over some questions and comments. It seemed like you guys liked that from the last video. Do you know what will happen to OpenCore Legacy Patcher after macOS 26? This is a big question that's been asked by many people, and it's A good question. After macOS 26 Tahoe comes out, Intel releases for macOS will end. So macOS 27, when it is released, no files inside that operating system will have any reference or anything to do with Intel devices. Over the time, the installer for macOS has bloated. Now the IPSW installer is almost 17 gigabytes because it has to have Intel and Apple Silicon. So that's going to be almost probably cut in half. Be a lot more lightweight. The updates will be smaller. With all that stuff stripped out, there will be nothing that the developers can use to be able to get that OS running in there. And again, I'm not saying nothing can't happen in the future, but let's be real here. It does not look good. And most likely, development on anything new will end. But that does not mean there won't be maintenance releases for OpenCore Legacy Patcher for the 3 operating systems at that time. For example, Tahoe, Sequoia, and Sonoma. If there's a security update that comes out and it breaks a piece of it, a hotfix for OpenCore Legacy Patcher can still come out. If they can fix something in macOS Sequoia or macOS Tahoe, they can still release a update to make it more reliable or add features back in. So with this race, every single year, we got to get it working. Sometimes, wouldn't it be nice to kind of fall back and get some of the things that, for example, are still struggling with in macOS Sequoia? Sure, but everybody wants to try the new stuff. Everybody wants to try the latest, and I totally understand that. So that's a great question. We need to get an interview with McCall. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I 100% agree. It's just that I'm not an interviewer, right? And I don't know, it seems like him and I would be able to have a wonderful conversation. If there's a question that you would like to ask Makola, put it in the comments below. Maybe I can start putting some questions together. Maybe he'll sit down with me. I got to ask him and see if he would even want to do that or if he's allowed to do that now that he's working with Apple. But I would absolutely love to just sit down with him and just have an open conversation. Of course, following the rules with being an Apple employee, we can still talk about computers. We can still talk about old Macs. There's many things. He just can't say anything with behind the doors. And that's totally understandable when you work for Apple. People are constantly asking for an ETA or killing the will of the devs to go forward sometimes. Like the devs from Check Rain, they get bombarded with ETA requests and then they announce that they will postpone the development until further notice. Stop doing that. You have to remember that these developers do not owe you anything, and they are doing it because of the passion, not for you. If you are one of those ETA guys, stop doing that. There's no reason to ask when it will be released. It sounds kind of harsh, right? Like they don't owe anything to you. Sometimes you have to have that like dish of reality to get maybe a change of thought, right? And everybody's just excited. When will macOS Tahoe be supported? Everybody's in their own world, right? Some people only check in maybe every month to see what's going on. Some people are checking in every day. So when they ask that question, to them it seems new, but let's be real, they can also check the forums. They can check the subreddit and they can see that this stuff's there. So I can understand that people might be frustrated by this stuff. Sometimes people say some negative things. Not you're a jerk developer, but how has it been so long since an update's happened? Why isn't this fixed? Why can't AirPlay work? Why did you have to disable this? Again, they're just asking a question, but time after time this starts to wear on the developers. And I can totally understand where they're coming from. All I ask is that we all practice a little common courtesy and empathy for them. What's interesting is that when I go through my comments, there is some of the most nice people helping others in comments, having nothing but well wishes for the developers in the comments. And gosh dang it, I can't help but not be choked up a little bit by reading through some of your comments. And I say that because I feel bad for some other creators because they get the worst comments. It's like, holy cow. And I talk to some of the creators that get some pretty rough comments. And to see all the support and love in my videos, man, I can't tell you how happy that makes me. You guys are absolutely fantastic. And I can't tell you how much joy it brings me. And I'll be real, I've told McCall about this and I've shared some of the comments with him so he could share with the developers. Because sometimes all the developers see is what happens in the Discord chat, not what's actually happening in this type of outside reality. Hopefully they shared those with the developers so they can see how much joy and happiness that you guys have by bringing your old Macs back to life. So again, thank you very much. I know all the people in the comments and my viewers, I don't need to tell this. It's more for new viewers who kind of get a little passionate about the updates. I appreciate your videos, but it's important to highlight that the developer of the OLCP mod has made it clear that she's only modding or adding to Apple HDA and some kexts to make older wireless dongles like the TP-Link work. In collaboration with other coders who are actively involved in OpenCore Legacy Patcher, Clover, and OpenCore teams, I've personally been a part of the Hackintosh community at Insanely Mac since 2006. Having had the success with my hacks with and without the OLCP mod, whether using OpenCore, especially Clover 5162. I've tested it and there's no malicious code. The Chinese student who was developing the project clearly shows the code, and it's not useful for those who only heard about it and don't understand. I know your work is excellent and I've always supported it, but in this case there was no need to give that advice without knowing the developer's work. And just because she hasn't referenced in the official project yet, it's better to have new people join than others leave. This is a loaded comment because I feel both sides. And what I mean by that is I can't recommend something that I don't know about, and this is a good point. If I don't know about it, I should investigate it myself. And that's 100% true. But I also don't want to lead others to something that could have widespread issues. And what I mean by that is that when I talk about the 83 different models, the developers have this fleet and they test it across there, and they want to make sure that when they push out this update, it's going to be as good as it can against that fleet. And that's why the developers ask for donations for hardware, SSDs, memory to upgrade these old devices, and they take donations of hardware so they can test that out. There's a whole process that happens in the background to prevent possibly something from happening. I'm not saying that the developer of OLCP mod doesn't do that either, but these are the things that have to be taken into consideration. Having other developers in the community is wonderful. When we talk about that mod, it's not necessarily talking against it, more for we just need to keep an open mind that we have to be happy about that there's development work happening, but also just keep an eye to be careful when we're installing anything that's not original OpenCore Legacy Patcher development. And I hope she keeps up the work, and that's wonderful. But I just wanted to be clear on that. I'm not dissing it, but I'm not saying that you should go install it tomorrow. And I think everybody can understand that. You talk too much, you talk like crazy, go straight to the point because your videos are boring. I think it's time to jump to the next part of the video. Okay, so now I want to get to the testing, right? This is what we all came here for, to see how the fleet is doing. And I'm showing this picture because I want to be clear. When you see all these machines here, what I want to show is that I truly care about these Macs. I also truly care about value too. Not everybody can afford even a used Apple Silicon Mac. So when I see these machines here, every one of these has been cleaned, repaired, upgraded, and put into service so we can test each model. I did that on a budget on almost every single one, whether it was a donation from a viewer or a Mac admin. I've had both, which is very thankful for. Thank you so much. Or I'm buying it from a computer show like VCF Midwest, where, for example, a couple of the MacBook Pros I got for $5 a piece, unknown condition, and I got them all fixed up. Again, value is number one, and why I care so much about OpenCore Legacy Patcher and getting these devices working and testing. Each one of these devices is put online and run through the update, and that means updating from 15.5 to 15.6 and applying the root patches. Sometimes it goes great, other times it does not, and I make sure I call that out in the individual section for each machine. And sometimes we have hardware failures at the same time too, and I make sure I call that out because it's not like it's directly to the update, but sometimes it just shows these machines are having issues. So now that we got that set, let's jump to a quick walkthrough. So I wanted to first start off with one of my favorite models, early 2011 and late 2011 MacBook Pros. I call them Fatbook Pros because of how thick they are and how many ports they have. This 17-inch version, I love the matte display. It's just absolutely beautiful, and it's high resolution on the 15-inch model. But I wanted to show the process of updating because there's a lot of talk about how do you update and upgrade. Really quick, the difference between the update and upgrade is going from, for example, 15.5 to 15.6. Upgrade is going from macOS Sequoia to macOS Tahoe, for example. That's an upgrade. When we go into system settings and then we go into software update, it's important to understand what's going in here. We have to look at two very important things. We got to make sure that automatic updates are off. This is very important for new viewers. And the reason why we have to turn them off is that Apple has changed the way updates work. And if you have downloaded new updates when available, selected on, when 15 15.6 comes out, or even macOS Sequoia Tahoe, it automatically downloads it in the background. But the problem is, it's not just like a download file, like a full installer. It actually modifies and prepares your system and prevents you from installing root patches until you remove the update or you install the update. So make sure you always turn off those automatic updates. The next thing is that this macOS Sonoma device is a good test example because it's always going to have the latest version of the operating system up here. But the update below is going to be right down here, and it's really in small text. So for example, if the 14.7 update was down here and you clicked on this, I got a screenshot to show you. This is what it looked like. So you had to click on download other updates down here, and then finally you saw the Sonoma update, and you could click update now. Keep in mind also, Safari is going to be a part of the two previous OSs. It's included in the latest, like Sequoia, but in Sonoma and Ventura, it's listed as a separate. So make sure you download and install that for the latest security updates for Safari. So all you need to do is click on Update Now, and it starts to download and update. Now this is where that KDK and the MetalLibSupport package come in. A lot of your comments on the 15.6 video said, I installed the update, but I didn't see any pop-up. And you're looking for this here, the KDK build. But that's what I talked about earlier. It's not available, so you won't see this. And that's why it's important to watch this and understand, why didn't you see it like normal? Well, now we know it's not available from Apple. And this is the warning sign that you'll get that something has to happen. It's still happening in the background, but it's letting you know that it's downloading either the MetalLibSupport package or the KDK. So that's happening in the background. And then it puts it into, for the MetalLibSupport package, it puts it in Library, Application Support, Dortania folder, right here. See that? And there'll be a MetalLibSupport package here. For the KDKs, it is in Library Developer, KDKs, and you'll see the latest version right here. Click on Install Now. It's going to download, prepare, restart. When the system comes back up, this is the next thing we need to really talk about. And I'm talking about it this way because in the previous videos I've done a demo and it kind of got lost in the demo. When the system comes back up after the update, there's two things that are happening here. If for some reason that your KDK or MetalLibSupport package did not download, the patcher knows that. And what it'll say is that when we need to install the root patches after, because remember, after we install the update, the sealed snapshot is sealed then, and it's not accelerated. So you might see a black screen, a white background, and the system's super slow. We need to unseal, put the drivers back in with OpenCore Legacy Patcher, reboot, and then we've got acceleration, Wi-Fi, and all the other pieces. That's why we got to install those root patches after. But keep in mind, if you didn't get the KDK or the MetalLibSupport package for whatever reason, a download failure or whatever, on some systems it'll say your root patches need to install legacy Wi-Fi or modern Wi-Fi. And what that does is that installs and gets Wi-Fi working unless you're not connected to Ethernet. If you're connected to Ethernet, you can reach out and check. But if you're not, then it has to check to see if you got the latest KDK or MetalLibSupport. So it tells you to install Wi-Fi. You install it. If you're not paying attention, it comes back up and it's still not accelerated. You're like, why didn't the patches install? Why is my system still slow? Why do I have a white background? It's because all it did was install Wi-Fi. The next time you run the patcher again, it's going to be able to check for those packages, install them and download them, and then do your full suite of patches like this. So that gives you an understanding of this. If you have any questions about this whole process, let me know in the comments, because again, if you're new and you're trying to figure this out, it's a little bit confusing. But that just gives you a general walkthrough of how the patching process works when you're doing a software update. I've seen a lot of comments saying, I use the full installer to do the update. You don't have to do that. First of all, it takes a long time to download the 17 gig installer. It also takes sometimes 4 to 5 times longer to use the full installer to do it. You don't have to download the full installer and run it from here, and you don't have to download the full installer to run it off a USB to update. Now you can, because if something goes wrong, you still have that USB backup, and I recommend everybody having that, but that gives you a idea that you don't need to do that. But if you want to do that, it's been working for you, more power to you. Okay, our first device is our MacBook Pro, our newest device, 15-inch 2017. This is important because this is a T1 security chip Mac, and it's also a Touch Bar and a Touch ID Mac. One of the comments I saw in the 15.6 video is that my Touch Bar is not working. There could be a lot of different reasons, and that's why we tested in the update, because you can see that this Touch Bar is working just fine. I make sure I test that, and I also check Touch ID by locking it and then unlocking with my fingerprint, and that's all working. Keep in mind, if for some reason the touch bar is not working, you have to install the last official supported version, whether it's on a USB drive or external drive or on the system as separate partition itself, to get the embedded OS back in there, to get the Touch ID and the touch bar working again. If you erase the top level drive in disk utility, like up here, when you're showing all devices, if you click this and delete this, this also deletes the touch bar OS and embedded OS. And if you have a newer version that doesn't support this touch bar anymore, it's not going to include that embedded OS, and either is any installation of macOS with OpenCore Legacy Patcher. So that's how to get the touch bar working again. And be careful when you're doing it. If you only delete Macintosh hard drive, you're not deleting the hidden container with embedded OS in there. This 2017 15-inch MacBook Pro is running very well on OpenCore Legacy Patcher 2.4.0. Next up is our little guy here, our 2016 12-inch MacBook. Love this little guy. The only thing it suffers from is only USB-C, no Thunderbolt, butterfly keyboard unfortunately. If it had Thunderbolt and the Magic Keyboard, this would be like a perfect device for travel and just lightweight. It's just a wonderful little laptop. Hopefully when Apple, there's rumors saying that a new MacBook is going to come back out. Hopefully it just follows this model. I think people would just buy this with an M4, M5 in it. 2.4.0 is running very well on there. On this Mac we have no KDK and no MetalLib support packages are needed. It's got Intel Skylake, modern wireless, and PCIe FaceTime camera, and those patches installed just great on this 12-inch 2016. Now we have our 15-inch mid-2015 Retina MacBook Pro. And this machine is on the list because it's very unique, because it needs both the MetalLib support package and the Kernel Debug Kit. When the patcher goes to install the root patches, it is getting both this. You can see the 15.6 MetalLib support, and we only obviously still have 15.5. And again, if the Kernel Debug Kit for 15.6 does come out, check the comments of the video or my website. I will make sure I update that so you know when they come out, or if at all. And we're running on 2.4.0, and this system is running very well. Next up is our Mac Mini, late 2014. And this particular one replaced our 2011 Mac Mini server that died with memory errors. I picked this one because it still has its original 5400 RPM drive. So even though it's a 2014, this machine is very slow. It takes a long time to boot, takes a long time to log in, and that shows how important it is to have an SSD as an upgrade to even start into using OpenCore Legacy Patcher and an unsupported OS. This machine has Intel Haswell and modern wireless for the patches, and you can see that it needs the MetalLib support package. So again, that's my recommendation, that if you're going to do OpenCore Legacy Patcher, make sure you have an SSD. Next up is our trash can 2013 Mac Pro. This system's running very well. We're running post-root patches of graphics, including AMD Legacy GCN and modern wireless patches, and 2.4.0. I'm not noticing any issues whatsoever so far. Next up is our early 2013 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro. This is our Kepler device, or all Kepler devices have problems with the software update mechanism in software update system settings. Now I think I've got a good system down where I can get this to kick off. So for example, what happens is if you try to load software update, it just shows blank, it'll spin, it won't show the update, or it'll show the update, you click the button and nothing happens. What I've been doing over the last couple updates is trying to figure out how to get this to reliably go. And what I've come up with is a combination of just watching system settings and running it from software update. So what do I mean? First of all, I'll run a software update list, -L to list the update, and then it'll show up. I'll copy the name of the update, then I'll run sudo software update -I, and then I'll do quotation, the name, paste it, and then an end quotation, and then hit enter and it'll install. Is then this will come up and show this, and this looks weird, right? It's not, and this won't go anywhere. But once this gets to 60% in here, when it's done downloading, then you'll see it move to this next section here and start to prepare. and then it'll automatically reboot after, and that's worked very well. So let me know if that works for you, or if you're still having problems with installing Sequoia updates on Kepler. Next up is our MacBook Pro 13-inch mid-2012 9,1. And I like this guy, and you've heard me talk about this statistic before. This is the most used Mac in the entire OpenCore Legacy Patcher fleet. It holds 9.5% of all the installations, and there's a reason behind that. This guy was the old reliable workhorse for the value and education. So this was sold between 2012 and 2000, all the way up until 2016. So they sold probably millions of these Macs. They're still a great machine, quick, and they're very reliable. Still has the super drive in it, so you'll be able to run DVDs or movies and burn discs. Great machine. This is running Intel Ivy Bridge Modern Wireless 2.4.0, and it needs the MetalLibSupport package. And there's no issues that I've been able to find whatsoever so far. Next up is our lovely late 2011 17-inch MacBook Pro. Look at this beast. Love this guy. We are running Intel Sandy Bridge graphics, AMD Terascale 2, and Modern Wireless, and Legacy Keyboard Backlight 2.4.0, and we also need the Kernel Debug Kit, which you already had for 15.5. Now I wanted to show you a quick tip here. If you're running a background with a darker type thing and you can't really read the menu bar very much, you can go into the settings and you can switch it. So go into root patching, and this is, again, we are in non-metal territory here. 2011 below non-metal are considered non-metal, and 2012 are considered metal compatible graphics cards. So we'll go in here and we're in the non-metal configuration. Unclick dark menu bar and then hit return, and then all we need to do is log off and log back in to take effect. And there you go. You can see we've got now our white menu bar, and you can see it a little bit better when you have a background that meshes between the white and the dark. Now we have our 11-inch early 2014 MacBook Air. How can you not like this little guy here? It reminds me of the 12-inch MacBook. We are running 2.4.0. We have Intel Haswell Modern Wireless and PCIe FaceTime camera, and we do need the MetalLibSupport package, and this guy's running very well, no issues whatsoever. Now we have our mid-2010 13-inch beautiful polycarbonate MacBook. We are running Nvidia Tesla, Modern Wireless, Legacy Keyboard Backlight, Legacy USB 1.1. That means when you see that, 2010 and below will require you plugging in a USB 2.0 dongle adapter for keyboard and mouse, or a 2008 keyboard like this, and this is what I use. This is still compatible, the Apple version from that's 2.0, and that works very well to be able to install those patches. Once that patch is installed, then you'll be able to use the trackpad and the keyboard. Veteran viewers know that already, but if you're new and, for example, it's asking for a mouse or keyboard and you don't know why the keyboard and the trackpad isn't working, that's why. We also need the KDK, and so far this little guy is running very well. Next up is our late 2015 27-inch 5K Retina iMac. This thing's running really well. This is a perfect OS for this machine. Really quick, SSD, i7 processor. You got plenty of memory. This is a wonderful device, and they're cheap. If you're looking for a good device, the iMac is a good, reliable machine. 2.4.0. We do need the KDK, and this thing's running really well. Now we have our mid-2011 27-inch non-metal iMac. It needs the KDK, it has Intel Sandy Bridge and AMD Terascale 2, and we're on 2.4.0. This machine is running okay, except there's intermittent Wi-Fi issues with this model. Now let me know if you've got a 2011 and you're having the same thing. What that means is it's constantly searching for the Wi-Fi, and it will eventually connect after about 2 or 3 minutes. But it continues to have problems, and it won't automatically connect when you come up in the operating system. So let me know if you've got an iMac and you can repeat this. So it'll show connected, but it'll continue to search, and then finally after a while connect. Let me know. Now let's talk about some casualties or some machines that had problems. Unfortunately, our 2008 is not liking the root patches. We are on 15.6, but when the root patches are applied, it will not boot. So I have to do some troubleshooting. That does not mean all the machines will do that. There could be some configuration or problem with this particular system, but let me know. 15-inch 2008 MacBook Pro. If you're having a problem, please let me know in the comments. And the other casualty is, not really a casualty, again, problem. Unfortunately, my 2010 Mac Pro 5.1. It is not coming up properly sometimes with the screen. It won't restart, and the graphics don't come back. So I gotta do some troubleshooting on that guy. If you've got a 5.1 and you have any issues after 15.6, let me know in the comments. Again, this is not a guarantee that you'll have issues, but this is why I test. Not every test is going to be 100% perfect, but that's why we need more feedback. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any comments. Put them in the comments section below, and we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.